right, good morning. Good morning. All right. Good morning. This is the Human Services Background Study Eligibility Task Force Subcommittee on Data. Today is Friday, April the 1st, 2022. Mr. Vogel, could you please do roll call?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Ms. Evans? I see you waving, Ms. Evans, so I'll mark you as here. Mr. Kammer? Mr. Kammer. Ms. Mattson?
Here.
Thank you. Representative Mueller? Representative Mueller. Ms. Robertus? Ms. Robertus. Ms. Williamson? Sorry, Madam Chair, I think you're muted.
Oh, present.
Yeah, no worries. Madam Chair, 3 of the 6 members are present. The quorum is not present, so the group won't be able to do an official action like adopt the meeting minutes, but I'll let you know if that changes and another member comes in.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so we're just going to go on to our agenda topic regarding the discussion of disqualification.
Oh, and Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Robertus just came in, so I'll mark her as present.
Perfect. All right, welcome, Member Robertus. Okay, so yeah, we are, and I understand we're still not at quorum.
Madam Chair, we're now at quorum.
Yes, all right, perfect. So we can go ahead and do the adoption of the previous meeting minutes. Want to see if any member has any corrections or additions needed to the previous meeting minutes, excuse me. And if not, we can go ahead and go forth in adopting those meeting minutes. Mr. Vogel? I don't hear any objections. All right. So we'll move into a discussion. So there was a request list that went out in regards to most common crimes or conduct. And so there is an overview that Mr. Vogel so graciously created that we can go over, and then also look to have a further discussion in regards to what Mr. Vogel will present. Mr. Vogel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a moment, I'm going to share my screen here, and you should be able to see it now. So the the disqualification subcommittee in their last meeting had a discussion essentially about what analysis from the data subcommittee would most help their work. And I think sort of as 3 broad buckets, as the document I sent you says. They were interested in seeing what the most prevalent crimes or conduct that led to a disqualification for the various look-back periods were that we can find in the DHS data sets. What evidentiary standards those were based on, so convictions versus preponderance of evidence, that sort of thing. And then they were also interested essentially in analysis of how many crimes or how many, I'm just going to say crimes, not conduct, but how many crimes in various categories led to disqualification. So for example, murders on the list, that would pretty obviously be a violent crime. Thefts on the list, I think it's, that's a property crime of some sort. So like, how many crimes of those various categories. Now, the problem there, of course, is there aren't necessarily pre-existing categories. Categories for violent crimes exist in state law, but those, for example, include drug-related crimes. So the disqualification subcommittee basically left it up to the data subcommittee to come up with categories that make sense to you. So that may be something you might want to do. But because the first request was essentially a question of playing around with data sets, I just did a bit of that work behind the scenes, and those are those documents that I sent you earlier this week. And so this presentation is just sort of a list of those most common crimes or conduct by look-back period. And please feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have any questions, would like to point anything out. And I can obviously go to any of these slides as you have your discussion interpreting this data if you'd like to point something out. So I'm drawing all of this data from the from table 6 of the 3rd DHS data set, which is the distinct count of disqualifying crimes or conduct by disposition type, years disqualifying, and year for all genders. Please let me know if you'd like me to do a similar treatment for tables 7 and 8, which break that essentially the same breakdown, but for males and females respectively. That's just a question of where you want to prioritize your work. But looking at the data given in that data set, we can see in 2018 and 2019, the most prevalent permanent disqualifications, and therefore bars, tend to be violent crime. I would interpret them as violent crimes anyway. You can see the list here. It's a fairly similar list of crimes for both years. That's true of pretty much all of these look back periods. So I'll just be quiet for a second and let you look at this list. I'd also note that aggravated robbery is by far the most prevalent crime that led to a permanent bar in 2018. And it's very close to assault to second degree assault, which is the other major one in 2019. We can see this is about 23 and 18.5% of respectively of the. I'm going to keep going, but Carol, I just heard a recording stopped on my end. Okay. Sorry. So basically, these are particularly common crimes that lead to a disqualification, whereas some other crimes on that permanency list lead to far fewer disqualifications. What you want to do with that is, of course, up to you. I'm skipping the 10-year bars because there honestly weren't enough crimes with enough disqualifications to lead to any sort of meaningful list. The DHS data set just had sub-10s for everything for 2018 and pretty much everything for 2019. Moving on to 15-year disqualifications, we see controlled substance crime in the 5th degree and theft, really dominating this list. Just gonna shut up and let you look at it for a second. Moving on to the 10-year disqualifications, we see theft and financial transaction card fraud really dominating, theft really dominating this list. And then we see financial transaction card fraud, check forgery, issuance of dishonored checks. Those all are this high single digits percentage of all of the 10-year disqualifications in those years. Moving on to 7-year disqualifications, again, theft is really dominating here. Followed by domestic assault. And as I'm recalling off the top of my head from looking at the evidentiary standards there, domestic assault is an example of a lot of non-conviction evidentiary standards. And then we have this category years disqualifying, not entered for offense. And here theft and controlled substance crime in the 5th degree, again, really dominate. So, this is just a question of ranking an Excel spreadsheet. Essentially, the interpretation is up to you as members. I guess just off the top of my head, my initial reaction though was, with the exception of the permanent bars, we're seeing a lot of what looks to me like drug-related crimes and property or fraud-related crimes, theft, issuance of dishonored checks, that sort of thing. And with that, members, I'm going to stop share. We might actually have some technical issues on our end, so if you'll excuse me, I'm going to try to look into those.
All right. Wow. So we can open up discussion. Member Robertus, were you?
Oh, I'm not muted. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. Just wanted to make sure.
I mean, 2 years, you'd think we'd figure this mute button out, but it just still plays tricks on us.
At least once a week it happens to me. At least once a week. Oh my goodness.
One of the things I did with the entire data set was go through and add up between the 2 years all of the instances of 5th degree possession, and it added up to 3,000 disqualifications between the 2 years. So that's how many disqualification. I mean, that's a lot of work for DHS for fifth degree possessions, a lot of work. And then you think about how many people like go through this. Yeah, I mean, we haven't received that data yet, but that's how many people go through the set aside, how many people go through the set aside process for that crime as well. And for 15 years, they have to do that for. And so like, you just think about the amount of work that goes into that for that one particular crime. The other thing that really stood out to me for this was, I'm pretty sure, and I would have to look at the statute, but issuing a dishonored check, that's like writing your own check. That's like writing a bounced check on your own account. And that's 359 of them in 2019 and 200, so 559 instances of like poverty, criminalizing poverty. And so those were just a couple of things that that stood out to me in looking at this data. The other thing that I just wondered about, like, thank you so much for doing this work, Will. And then I wonder, like, in the next hour or so, how we could, like, maybe take some of this stuff off that we know we're not going to be able to do anything with. And then, you know, how do we get to work? How do we spend these hours together, like getting down to business? And then I know I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I was a little alarmed that we decided to go to every month, because in my mind, like spending, you know, when we get off these meetings, I try to do some work, but I know all of you aren't in the same position as me to be able to get paid like by my work to do this work. And so in my mind, my thought was that after we got the interim report in and got the final data set, that we would spend these hours together getting down to the business of getting to this data together. And so, you know, I would like to, you know, talk about, you know, having these meetings be every other week and like looking at this data and figuring out like, what does it tell us? And how do we get the basis of something together to share with the other data, so the other committees to be able to make recommendations. And so that's just a couple of initial thoughts that I have.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Member Robertus.
I'm not sure I disagree, Gina, but I also feel like I left our last larger group meeting a tad confused about next steps. Because I think we started to dive into that organization, right? About who does what and where are we going to start? And is it time to start tackling some more specific recommendations? So like you said, we can get to work. And so I guess I'm not opposed to meeting more frequently. I'm also know we have a ton of data that we've already taken a look at, and do we need to keep doing more? And you know, and so that was just more the balance type question I posed at our meeting. A little bit, I'm not sure.
So we have some specific jobs that we've been given by disqualifications and remedies to do some work.
Madam Chair, I think for me, it would be helpful if we could assign some dates and a timeline to, you know, what our goals are, what we want to have accomplished and by when, including analysis of data so that we're not just in a constant state of requesting and analyzing, because it feels to me like it's so much, there's so much data that we have to chunk it off and assign it out in a way that's more digestible to say, you know, can we have somebody analyze X, Y, Z or whatever by the end of May, and then we're going to do this. I don't know the frequency as to what we should meet, because to me, I would like to prioritize based on whatever that goal list is. I don't know if it needs to be more frequently until we get to a certain point and then we're done. I don't know. I guess I want to see it kind of all written out. Including what we've requested and what's already been analyzed, so that we can kind of take a look at, okay, we've already done that. Let's not redo it again. We've already analyzed and discussed X. Now it's time to make recommendations based on that analysis and discussion.
Yes. Yes, thank you for all that was said. So I do know that, just previous meetings that we've had in regards to kind of listing out specific points of interest for us. And now with Chair Geffen officially stating that delegating for this subcommittee to analyze the data. And then also respectfully so, the anticipation of when we would receive data versus when it actually came. That's a factor as well, right? And so I know that our last meeting we had planned to meet the end of this month, and now here we are on April 1st. And so really at this point, just to go about this in a systematic way, first off, being able to, there's some requests from disqualification as well as from remedies, right? There's data that we're still waiting on. So I'm wondering two things. First of all, for us to figure out what would be, the first would be for us to look at what specific definitions that we need. So for example, with the presentation that Mr. Vogel just gave, which again, thank you, Mr. Vogel. But looking at the crimes that are listed here, if we want to, highlight specific ones, or especially ones that disqualification highlighted, to just get like what the definitions are in regards to what those crimes, what qualifies those crimes, if you will. And then with us formulating that list, because we also have a charge, which is the second, we have an ask from the chair, which is the second charge I have, of then being able to figure out a timeline of how we're going to go about focusing in on those specifics, the specific analyzations, right? In addition to, I'm hopeful that with DHS, as they're looking to have different ones to come available when they can to help to give further explanation as we're doing our analysis. There's not one specific answer to this. We kind of need to just go about it from a both and standpoint. And so with that, I just want to open up the floor for Ms. Kassane, who is here. Thank you so much. Just to see if there's any updates that you have in regards to requests that have been made to the department.
Madam Chair and members, happy Friday and April Fools. So my report today is, I apologize, going to be very much like what I told you last time. But it's a new it's similar, but it's a new update. I've sort of rechecked with our group. And it's with a similar preface of last time, the last 2 weeks, probably our busiest of the session. So we've sort of been focused in a variety of areas, each one of us. So we are close to the 4th data set, just doing some cleanup on that and going through the approval rounds. So that should be coming soon. So that should be coming soon, and I'll keep you up to date. You'll get it as soon as I do. I promised I would go through Mr. Vogel's list of questions that, and just checking where we are on your requests, and I'm working on that as well. So, and I'll give that to you as soon as I'm finished with that. It's just matching up various pieces that are in each data set and making sure, sort of crosswalking to make sure that each one of your questions is in one of those reports or highlighted to be answered after the fourth data set is complete. And just to let you know if there are any that where we don't have data, and that is the case, going to be the case for some of them, but just to give a snapshot of where we are in the process. So I apologize for the still waiting status, but that's where we are.
Thank you, Ms. Kassane. If any members have any questions directly for Ms. Kassane, please feel free. I do want to say, like, in regards to the list that we've seen here, one initial step would be to separate out like those the property crimes, because again, that's putting property over people. So being able to separate that out, because, you know, as we're looking at with the recommendations to be made, we're looking if there's certain statutes that either just need to be, you know, whether there's amendment that needs to happen, or if we need to look at creating new statutes, right? So really being mindful of that property over person, property over people, so that's to me like comparing apples to oranges. So that's something that we can separate out. I think also if we're looking to, I know in the past we've talked about like just specific to workforce, but also just looking like, for example, seeing how the fifth degree controlled substance, like, oh my goodness, what is the criteria for that? Like I said, going back to those definitions, I don't know if it would be maybe like 5 things that we can select, 5 crimes or conduct that we can select, but being able to just kind of go through, and we as a subcommittee together just formulate that list of like those high level focuses, so that then we can then take those deeper dives and then establish a time frame for how we're going to go about that deeper dive. My apologies. What are we thinking? I see some wheels are turning here. Because we have the 4th data set coming, and Ms. Kassane, maybe you, I can defer to you, because I know we submitted the request as far as the way they've been separated into these different data sets. That was something that DHS did. And so if you can, and maybe you've said this before, but if you could please remind us how many data sets in total you've divided out our request into.
Madam Chair and members, the request has been divided into 4 parts. So this is, for at least these initial queries that you had, this is going to be the final one. And they've organized to sort of, there is a logic to the way we divided them up. It's sort of going from general to more specific. It's like walking through the process of the background study, sort of becoming from general to more specific information at each data set. So this will be the 4th one. Then, like I said, I'll make sure that I'll crosswalk the elements of those 4 data sets with all your questions and the questions that are on Mr. Vogel's list and then make sure that any ones that aren't included can either provide an answer or there will be some where we don't have the data. And I'll let you know of those so that you know where we are for each data point that you've requested.
Yes.
Is
Madam
that-
Chair,
That's helpful.
Madam Chair, would it be
Please.
possible just for process purposes to set up like a timeline to say, let's look at, and some of this we've already done. So I'm not trying to say that we have to do it again, but just as far as process, data set received, data set analysis, and then a summary of what our analysis is. Just as a way to kind of break down what we have before us, like thinking about this particular data set that we have in front of us. We've already had a light discussion about nonviolent crimes and the potential need for more information about how that intersects with statute and with existing language, but just that type of thing so that we can summarize each of the analysis kind of sessions that we've done, and maybe what's still outstanding. And that might, if we need to have that, I think we just have to have a timeline done by the 22nd meeting. I don't know that we need to have everything accomplished by then. But just as a way to break down and orient ourselves to tasks, because it seems, I don't know, that would be helpful to me.
Yes, thank you, Member Mattson. That's something that we not really formally have formulated, but definitely makes sense to just kind of have a blueprint. Because I just know, even though our recent meeting was where Chair Geffen had specified us taking further analyzing of the data, that was my understanding just from our very first meeting, that this was something, just trying to be more forward thinking about it. Again, however, just kind of waiting for us to get it all so that we can then actually establish a time frame off of what we have versus what we're yet waiting on. So I like that confirmation really of what you've mentioned. So, Mr. Vogel, at this point, what do you think as far as what has been submitted? We've also gathered some data from some external sources. There's some data that we're yet looking to receive from some external forces. Or organizations would be better to say. What about, I'm just trying to think here, because I do want to say, yes, it's not expected for us before the 22nd to just have, this is the whole outline of what we're going to do, right? But I'm hoping, and Ms. Cassane, I know you stated that you would provide us that fourth data set as soon as you receive it. I noticed you did not give a time frame, and understandably so. Is there a possibility that we will have that fourth data set, before April 22nd, really like before next week? Is that something that we can kind of anticipate, or?
Madam Chair, members, next week, I know that we're close. I think there's a possibility of next week. I would hope by the end of the month. We were close, but it's just been, the last 2 weeks have been rather hectic for everybody.
I know our Vice Chair has her hand up. Before you begin, Vice Chair, that's kind of a big jump from we're close and possibly next week to maybe before the end of the month.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, members. So my thinking is we're close. So So I think there's a possibility of it next week. I wouldn't feel comfortable assuring you that it would be here next week because I'm not entirely certain. I would hope by the end of the month. So, but we need to finish the approval process and a few more eyes on it.
Mr.
Madam-
Vogel, and then Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without wishing to speak for the department, so please correct me if I misspeak for you, Ms. Cassane. I think it would be helpful to point out this is a really, really busy time of year for, well, everyone in state government, but especially the department. It's, I think, the second deadline today for the legislature. Basically, DHS has to get a lot of stuff together for a lot of committee meetings because they have deadlines on that end. So again, please do correct me if I'm speaking for you, Ms. Cassane, but the department, I expect, might not be quite so busy in, a few weeks.
Mr. Vogel and members, that is exactly, you characterize it correctly. We're all being pulled in different directions with a lot of different requests. So just getting people together to look at things. It's on everyone's to-do list. It's just a matter of other things keep being added to our plates and each individual plate. The legislature does have a break week after next. But we do continue to get requests during that time. We did last year, as I remember. So yeah, it's a priority, but this time during committee deadline periods is just very intense. And that was a very accurate characterization.
Vice Chair, please.
Yep, I was gonna say something similar to that. They're very busy right now, but also that we have a lot of data to go through already. Like we have so much data. And like I'd like just to echo what Nicole said. I know Will has already started a document with time, like the meetings that we could have and like the work that needs to get done. And like, I feel like we have so much stuff to do. And so like, what's the plan to get the work done that we need to get done? And then while we're getting that work done, that last data set will come. And so, getting through like, what is the stuff we're not going to get the legislature to move on? Let's get rid of those statutes. What is the stuff that that's maybe drug related that we can get the legislature to give some leeway on? What are the provider types that are the most affected by this workforce crisis? And what is the work that we can get done? Let's focus on that instead of the data that we don't have. I just feel like we just keep spinning our wheels when this group of individuals that we have together here can just start looking at the data that we have. And we have these hours, we're 40 minutes into this meeting and we haven't done much. And so I would just, and because of open meeting law, we can't 6 or 8 of us get together outside of this meeting and do this work separately. We have to do it here. Because of open meeting law. And so I don't know how to, I feel like I keep saying this over and over again. And I don't know how to say it differently. We have to do it here because of open meeting law. We can't get together outside of this time. And so we have to do this work. We have to look at this data. We have to pull out patterns, and we have to be able to bring this to the legislature and say, this is what we found that is keeping people from getting back to work, and ask them to do it. And we have a lot of data to look at. And so what is our plan to do that with the data we already have? Will has a document already started.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to the point where there's too much data where I just can't. I'm losing track of it. And so for me, I think I said this in our last meeting, we have a lot of good data already where I could tell you like where I think we personally should focus our time and energy on exploring, such as timelines. I agree with Gina. There's some data that tells us we're never going to move anybody on some of these permanent disbarment categories. Let's just move on from that. And then I sort of got a little overwhelmed when we got some of these requests coming in. So I would love for us to like review the requests that have been put before us and see what we have done, what we still need to do, and who can work on that. And when we get any of that done in the next 20 minutes? That would be my preference.
All right, thank you so much. Now, I'm wondering if, so I know we were looking at, let's see, Good Friday is on the 15th, correct?
Correct, Madam Chair. I'm of course able to send out a doodle poll if you'd like to try to arrange a meeting time that's not Fridays at noon.
No, I was just trying to figure out, I know with the Good Friday, we were looking at changing our schedule. And then was there any opposition in regards to next Friday, the 8th?
We have a task force meeting that day, all morning.
Okay. So I'm looking at that because just in the essence of time. So I know, multiple ones have just mentioned about specific topics that we know legislation is not looking to move forward on. So with us coming together, it's basically, I mean, if it's a matter of just sharing a screen and opening up a document and typing out those specific ones that we're going to just kind of set to the side, then let's do that, right? Again, this meeting today, per our last meeting, we were not going to meet today, but it was added on just so that we can more so just discuss the fact that going monthly, that's something that looks like that we should not do going forward. So here we can just open up a document and list out. Vice Chair, you mentioned some specific ones. Member Robertus, you mentioned some specific ones that you've noticed. Let's call them out. Let's list them. And those are ones that we will set aside. We have a clear request from data from the disqualification and remedies. Let's put them on a different list. Let's make the list. Because this is work. Again, I want to go back and obviously we've all been repeating ourselves a lot here, right? And there was specific pushback that we was just to gather the data. So let's move on to the next step. Mr. Vogel, could you please open up a document here, or open up the interesting points that we already started, and let's add to that the specific crimes that we know legislation isn't moving on, and any other points that Vice Chair.
Can we look at what we were asked to do by the other subcommittees first?
Well,
Yes.
before we do that, Vice Chair, I would like to list these specific points that legislation is not looking to move on. Let's just list those down right quick.
I think I think this might be partially my fault because I wasn't maybe articulate. I just felt like that maybe was an example. I'm not sure. I think my preference also would be to focus on our to-dos that we've been given from Chair Geffen and the Disqualifications Committee. I think my point to that, Madam Chair, was more that we have data that would allow us to do things like that eventually. I'm not saying that would be my priority for the next 20 minutes. I'm just saying the existing data allows us to take some of those next steps. Maybe not right now, but that was more my point.
Yeah, no, they were great points. I'm saying while you both had kind of made point about specifics that we know legislation isn't moving on, let's list those really quickly here.
Yeah.
It's fresh.
I don't want to take the next 15 minutes to do that when we've been given jobs to do by Chair Geffen, and we're going to meet on Friday again and not have any of that done.
Well, okay. All right, let's go ahead with the specific requests. I mean, I'm just saying, I want us to move forward. Okay, this is not, I don't want to hold us back in any way. So I just want us to move forward. I don't want it to just be talking about, let's do it. All right.
And Madam Chair, you should be able to see the document with the disqualification subcommittee requests on my screen now. And I also do have a blank document standing by if the members want to use that.
Thank you so much. So the first one here is in regards to the top 10 crimes in each category that led to disqualifications. My glasses on here. Okay, and so yeah, what are the top 10? What do we want to list here as being the top 10?
So Will did that. We just went over that. He just went over that group and did the percentages and all of that. And so thank you for doing that, Will. The next piece of that is what are the evidentiary standards that those top 10 were based on. And so that would be another chunk of data to look at, whether those were POE, conviction, adjudication.
Well, with going to that next point, Vice Chair, I just want to, with the top 10 that are listed here, I just want to see, are we all in agreement with going forward in regards to these specific ones that Mr. Vogel listed? Is there any objection?
Sorry, Ms. Robertis. Madam Chair, I'd just like to note that if members catch a typo or anything in the work I did, please just let me know. It's possible there's factual errors in there, but I think I have this accurate.
Perfect. Yeah, it looks great to me, Mr. Vogel. All right, so if there's nothing to add or correct in regards to that. All right, so we can list the evidentiary standards.
I have a question on this, and this is just my ignorance, Madam Chair, but does that mean the evidentiary standard for each category or each person, each of the 315 people that are like in the theft category, or does it just mean in general? And maybe I'm not wording myself correctly, but.
Yeah, it is looking as though it may be per category. Especially so, yeah, please.
Couldn't there be someone that's disqualified based on a preponderance of evidence standard for theft versus an adjudication of the crime? Or am I wrong?
Well, see, that would go back to us being able to get like the definitions or the qualifiers, right? That's going to be a huge part of us being able to analyze.
So is there someone on our team that has that baseline knowledge that can do that offline for us?
I mean, if you just talking, when you say definitions, you're just talking about the definitions of the disqualifying offenses?
That in addition to what are the points, what's the criteria to be considered a POE category, or those qualifiers in a sense. Is that something you can do, Member Robertis?
I feel like, didn't we get those definitions? Someone reviewed them with us, right? Didn't someone review POE, conviction and adjudication info? And I cannot remember where, and I cannot remember if it was verbal, in writing, or both.
It was in Chair Geffen's slide deck, I believe. And yes, there were definitions, but like not, I'm saying tying the top 10 It says what evidentiary standards were at the top 10 based on?
Madam Chair, Ms. Mattson, sorry if you don't mind me interrupting. I should note this is the language I'm using interpreting the discussion in the disqualification subcommittee. So this isn't like gospel. Vice Chair Evans, you were in that meeting.
Go ahead.
My understanding based on that conversation, and please correct me, Vice Chair Evans, was they were interested in, once we have this list of top 10 crimes, how, for example, for theft, for 15-year disqualification theft, what percentage of those 15-year disqualifications for theft were based on a conviction for theft? What percentage were based on preponderance of evidence determination? What percentage on adjudicated delinquent, which is essentially they did it as a juvenile, that sort of thing.
And it's all broken down in the data. Like there's, if you look at, there's a total and then it's broken down, adjudicated delinquent, admission, Alford plea, convicted, involuntary termination of parental rights. It's all, if you look at the data, it's all broken down.
So we just have to have somebody summarize it for us to answer that question.
Yep. It would just be actually additional in the data that Will already did. It would just be additional lines then.
Yep. Okay. I got it now.
Yep. It's basically just some busy work. Pulling. Yep.
And Gina, with open meeting law, am I hearing you say that not that I don't even know if I'm capable, but I couldn't go try to work on that independently. We would have to do it as a.
Yep, no, you can. And the way that I went back and looked at the open meeting law, and Will, it looks like a few of us can get together and do it. It just can't be more than a quorum. Otherwise we have to have it open to folks, is what I went back and looked at the original presentation. And that's what it looks like to me.
Ms. Evans, I think I'm going to punt on saying yes or no to that, just because open meeting law is a mess and a lot of it's not, there's not necessarily a lot of case law on it. So that may be a good conversation to take offline, but I will say you're not definitely wrong.
Yep. Well, that's what the presentation said. That is a few of us can get together as long as there's not a quorum. It's not subject to open meeting law.
Yeah, and that probably might be a good conversation to have online.
Yep.
Offline, sorry. If Madam Chair, if you don't mind me saying for a second, I realize I'm sort of like this guy who keeps saying open meeting law, open meeting law. My understanding from the nonpartisan lawyers essentially working for the legislature is the intent of the open meeting law is that the public should be able to see how decisions are made when they're made, right? So like, for example, if this group decides something about 5th degree controlled substance crimes, the public should be able to see, you do that. But that doesn't mean then that, if somebody's sitting down looking at this data themselves, that would necessarily fall under that principle, if you see what I mean. So, yeah.
Or even if it's one or two of us. Well, is that something, Member Roberts, is that something that you would be able to do and maybe work with Vice Chair Evans and Will? Is that something that we need you to confirm, or where do we go from here?
Madam Chair, you mean the analysis of what evidentiary standards are used?
Correct.
To be honest, Madam Chair, those documents I sent out earlier this week, I basically did calculate those percentages. I didn't have time to work that up as a presentation today because, honestly, I thought it'd be a more appropriate conversation for the members to have which of those numbers they think is important. But if you'd like, I could work up a document essentially breaking down for, I think, all 100 crimes for each of those years, what the evidentiary standard was. That's again the sort of busy work, I think, as you said, Ms. Evans.
And I think, Will, too, the request is just for the top 10, right?
As far as I understand, Mr. Burtis, yes.
Yeah, okay. I do not want to punt this to you, Will, so I'm willing to help me if you if you need it. But if you've already got a good bulk of it started, there's no reason for me to start from scratch. And I'm not confident I would know how to get there. I certainly could try, but if you've got a good start on it, That would be awesome. I don't know, but I also am willing to set up a time where if you need help or to divvy it up, I'm willing to do so.
Thanks for the offer, Ms. Robertus, and I might take you up on that at some point. I'm feeling pretty confident about being able to just get this done myself, so.
Yep. And Will, I would say adjudicated delinquent, admission, convicted, and preponderance of evidence are the ones that I would have you do, because those are the biggest chunks. And then maybe, yeah, I don't know. Other folks are gonna care about the maltreatment as well. And so you should probably add that, but like the Alford plea and how do other people feel about the involuntary termination of parental rights? Should we have that one on there? It's very few. It's 40 altogether on one of the years.
I'm thinking that there's a disparity there between male and female, so it might be worth it, even though it's a small number. It just really speaks to the inequities a little bit.
Yeah, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Madam Chair, Ms.
There's only
Robertus,
7 altogether.
that actually gets to another question I had. This breakdown I did was for table 6 from the third DHS data set, which is all genders. It sounds to me from that ask like you'd like to see the evidentiary standards that we see in table 7, which is males, and 8, which is females as well. Is that correct?
So much work.
Yes, please.
Okay, I can do that. Sorry, I just want to be very clear about, where I'm working and where I can not work.
Yeah, so looking at this though, in table 6, a lot of these end up being less than 10s in table 6. So I can't imagine what happens when you get into table 7 and table 8. And so I would just ask that the members would give Will some discretion to be able to move in between that. If it gets to less than 10 in table 7 and table 8, to feel free to move back to table 6. Like if you get down into genders and it ends up being a bunch of nothing, go back to all genders. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, Ms. Evans.
That's a good point, Vice Chair.
Madam Chair, sorry, I'm talking a lot, and I'm not a member, so it's a little uncomfortable, but I did want to point out something else. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull up my presentation for a second. When you were talking about definitions, Madam Chair, the numbers at the beginning of these titles are the references in the Minnesota statutes for these specific crimes. So I don't know how you'd like to handle that. This is a lot of specific crimes, so it may be a bit. It'd probably be a lot too much. It'd probably be too much use of time. But if you're really interested in the precise definition, I can always just pull up the relevant Minnesota statute and you can look at it, or I can send it to the members. Please just let me know. It would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think just with the evidentiary standards, that will more so hone in on the purpose, right? Unless anyone feels differently about that. All right. I'm looking at time here. We're right at 1 o'clock. I just want to just state here, if anyone has a hard stop, completely understandable.
I've got to go, you guys. I'm sorry.
No worries. And thank you so much,
Yeah,
Ms.
I do
Roberta.
too, sorry.
So I do want to say too, before you both leave really quick, maybe we can look at a doodle poll just to look at weekly meetings for what we can accommodate going forward. So just look for that doodle poll as we try to get something else on as soon as possible.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So bullet number 4 on here, we can't do yet. We don't have that data. That stuff will be in data set 4. And do we need a doodle poll? Can we just go back to meeting every other week on those Fridays? Does that not still work for folks?
Well, it was more so because of the holidays that's coming up for this month. It's more so why we would, need to do a doodle. And Mr. Vogel, please. I know you kind of just put that out there, but that would be why, Vice Chair, just because I know
Okay.
some of the Fridays aren't going to work for this month.
Because the next 2 weeks is Good Friday.
Yes.
Okay. And then the third bullet is how many crimes were there in each category of conduct, violent crimes, drug-related crimes? Oh, that's a great question. And that is still, we're in the top 10, right? Or
Mhm.
no? We're,
Madam Chair, Ms. Evans, my understanding is yes, they were primarily interested in the top 10. And I should note just to reiterate that these examples I'm giving of categories are just my examples, and they were really looking to you to come up with your own categories, like whether you want to have a separate drug-related crimes category from violent crimes, for example.
yeah, because drug crimes are considered violent crimes in Minnesota. I just want to keep pointing out that ridiculous law that we have here in the state.
Wait a minute. That's something unique to Minnesota?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Huh.
Yep. Yeah, we've done the research on that. It started back in the 80s. They made drug crimes part of the violent crime category, so that people that got drug crimes would lose their right to bear arms. So they added it to the violent crime list.
But that's something that I think we should definitely just highlight as a part of this analysis, just as a reminder, if nothing else.
And that's something that I think as I'm working on a presentation. Do I have to go? I think I have to go too. Hold on, let me look. Yep, gotta go. Bye.
No problem. No worries, Vice Chair. Let's see. I know that Jill is here. And so Jill, I just want to open up the floor if there was anything that you want to add, or just in regards to you and Member Kammer's work, any additional assistance that we can offer as far as, especially with him not being here today. Just want to open up the floor to you.
Yeah, so I think for him and I, we are just looking for that next data set to be able to kind of hone in all of it to then, what we want the people to know, what are the most important points. So something I was kind of writing down, and it's indicated here on that third bullet is looking at what people versus property crimes are in like those top 10, and then violent versus non-violent, and then the drug versus non-drug really. But I also did not know that the drug related are considered violent. So just that breakdown that they're asking would be really, really good to look at. Because then I think if we are, eliminating property crimes, non-violent crimes, and drug crimes, like how many of those backgrounds are we eliminating from, them having to do, like increasing then who is eligible to work, and lessening that time frame for employers to have new employees. So that's kind of all I have to recap right now.
Mr. Vogel, if you were already taking the notes, I'm assuming you were already taking the notes, but those requests, can we add those? It doesn't have to be just the next bullet point, but we can like specify that this is some points brought up in regards to the research that Member Kammer and Ms. Jill is doing. Can we add that on?
Madam Chair, to my notes or to this document? Sorry, I'm
to this
little unclear.
document. To this excuse me, this document, but just highlighting that this was some additional observations from the work that that Member Kammer and Ms. Jill are doing. And if you need Ms. Jill to repeat anything, please.
Yeah.
Get it.
So essentially that this fits with Professor Kammer and your works, Ms. Salstrom, and that these categories will be really helpful once the group develops them, is what I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we're comparing violent to non-violent crimes, drug-related crimes to non-drug related crimes, and then the people versus property crimes.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just put that in shorthand, actually, violent v non-violent. People v property, and I'm skipping the middle one, I know.
And, mhm.
Sorry, what was that middle one?
The drug crimes versus non-drug related crimes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get that on paper.
Yeah. I should note, Madam Chair, because the disqualification committee essentially asked you to develop your own categories here, since the official definitions may not be very useful, I think was the thrust of their discussion. This isn't work that I can really do, since it's sort of a judgment that the members need to make what crimes fit into what categories, if you see what I mean.
Completely
So
understandable.
yeah, so in the next meeting, you might want to have a discussion of exactly where we draw these lines, just as a suggestion.
Yeah, very valid point. Very valid point. So I think, excuse me, Ms. Hussein, if you could, it would really be helpful, and I do understand where things are at with session at this time. You know, this is a request that was put out, you know, January. So I'm really hoping that you could be able to kind of pinpoint more of a time frame. And this is just being very full transparency, just to see if we will be able to have that fourth set before the April 22nd meeting. Hopefully at the very latest by that Friday before, so that we have adequate time to include that in regards to what we plan to present, or just the updates we plan to give to the full task force. Does that make sense, Ms. Hussein?
Yes, Madam Chair and members. Again, in the interest of full transparency from our end, I don't feel comfortable giving a firm date, given the status of various people's workloads. I work closely with many people, but I'm not sure all of it's on their plate. I know it's a lot. I can assure you that as soon as I receive I can assure you of a couple of things, important things. One is that it is a priority for people, and two, that as soon as it's through the approval process and I'm able to share it, I will share it. So I can ask people if they think it can be done by the 22nd and get back to you, but and I apologize, but I don't want to speak for my colleagues at this point, even though I know that's a couple weeks out.
No, understandable. Excuse me. So yeah, and again, I'm not asking for a specific date, just to again reiterate the importance of us getting that set as soon as possible. Would be greatly appreciated. All right. So what we'll do then, Mr. Vogel, we'll prepare to adjourn here. Just want, as far as some next steps, we can just get the doodle poll out just to see some times that will work for this month for the members, so that we can at least get, at least 2 to 3 meetings in before, of course, before the 22nd of April would be the hope.
Certainly, Madam Chair.
All right. Just trying to see, was there anything that I was missing, Mr. Vogel?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair, particularly if we are meeting before the 22nd.
I do want to just ask too, and then we can also meet offline, but I just want to make sure with the agenda that I know we have it listed as our discussion, but I also want to add in there just a creation, either creation or just solidifying the specific the high level focuses for the subcommittee.
Mhm.
So we're all kind of clear on that, because I don't want it to be where I'm asking one thing and I get pushback, and then we we stop, and then it's like, well, we're not doing anything. I don't want that time to be wasted in that regard. So.
Certainly, Madam Chair, and that might be a good conversation to take offline.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So with that, we can adjourn the meeting for today. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right.